Mr. President, at the time when technical talks facilitated by our Pakistani and Qatari brothers are focused on implementing the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, the Council is expected to refrain from convening a meeting that risks undermining these ongoing efforts.
Unfortunately, the representative of the regime started his remarks today by saying, apparently, this council should not meet, should not speak. Let me remind you where you are. This is not Tehran. This is the United States of America. This is the United Nations Security Council. You will not silence this body. Colleagues, 3 months ago, through Resolution 2817, led by the Kingdom of Bahrain, this council stood with our friends in the Gulf without opposition. As their hospitals, as their airports, energy infrastructure, resorts were under blistering fire from Iranian drones and missiles. And I'll tell you, personally, on a personal note, I was just in the Gulf, in the Kingdom, along with the United Arab Emirates and other partners that have been indiscriminately struck by Iran, with their civilian infrastructure repeatedly damaged. I visited some of the locations that the Iranians have hit, and if you have any doubt about Iran's intentions, I encourage each one of you to go. Go and talk with the Bahrainis, visit Manama, visit Abu Dhabi and other locations. They didn't just kind of fire off a bunch of missiles and drones hoping that they would hit a few targets. It was deliberate, it was well planned, it was malicious. I visited the Bahraini Petroleum Company, where I saw where Iran very precisely targeted the fire suppression lines first. They then targeted first responders so that they could not respond. They targeted a site literally in the middle of a neighborhood. Fortunately, the drone didn't explode. Would have potentially killed 2,000 to 3,000 families in a massive, massive explosion. But they did this in a way to maximize damage. Even when they hit fuel tanks, they targeted the largest fuel tank and was sure to hit the bottom of the tank rather than the top so that it fully drained. And again, the fire suppression apparatus, the safety apparatus had been destroyed, and the first responders even, the firemen and women had been attacked so that they couldn't put out the fires. They even aimed at chemical storage areas, again, where direct strikes could have killed thousands of innocent people in what Iran will, I'm sure, their representative today will call neighbors and colleagues. That's not how you treat neighbors in my neighborhood where I come from. Meanwhile, they've stopped every ship from transiting the Straits of Hormuz, and it didn't matter if the ship was carrying fertilizers to farmers in Africa, aid to Sudan, fuel to Japan, whether they were involved in this conflict or not. We've heard talk today of root causes. I don't think farmers in East Africa were involved in root causes. Civilian, military, didn't matter. Iran sought to punish the world, all of us, all of you, people who had no interest, no party, even no knowledge of their nuclear aspirations. Just this week, the UN Trade and Development Agency found that Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz will have lasting effects on 61 developing economies. Again, let's go back to the talk of root causes from our Russian colleagues. Okay, hit back on military sites, fire back on United States bases in the region, fire back on Israel even. But 61 developing countries that will suffer now, or their crops won't grow, because Iran sought to indiscriminately and seeks to indiscriminately punish the world. because of their views in this conflict. Iran cannot, and we cannot allow it to hold the world's economy hostage. So many innocent civilians around the world are being affected. So as a response, Bahrain, our Gulf Arab allies, and others rallied a record-breaking 136 co-sponsors who spoke with one voice. Iran must stop its attacks on its neighbors and leave an international waterway, Straits of Hormuz, open for all. Our friends in the Gulf have rallied another 143 co-sponsors on a separate draft resolution circulated in May that once again calls on Iran to stop its illegal mining. We can't just throw mines, whether it's on land or in the sea, in response to a conflict. Illegal tolls, and respect international law for free passage for all. So we're here today because despite the diplomatic achievements and agreements, Iran still hasn't shown the world a basic level of decency and respect. Instead, they openly defy this council, their neighbors, and basic tenets of diplomacy. Members of this council told Iran, stop the attacks, open the strait. Iran's neighbors respectfully asked Iran, stop the violence, open the strait. Even their closest partners told them privately, stop the mining, stop the tolling, and open the strait. And just 2 weeks ago, the United States signed a memorandum of understanding with Iran. Its most basic premise, the strait's international waterways must be open. Attacks on civilian shipping must stop. And we're here today because Iran ignored that. Last week, Iran fired missiles and drones at civilian infrastructure in Bahrain and Kuwait. Why? Why? They also fired at commercial vessels transiting Omani territories. So again, we just heard, well, Iran has a right to defend itself. Okay. Do they have the right to attack Kuwait and attack random civilian ships flagged by Panama and Singapore in international waters? Is that a right under Article 51 of the UN Charter? I would think not. So again, let's be clear what happened here. After 136 countries told Iran to stop, Iran fired again. After its neighbors pleaded for de-escalation, Iran fired again. After the United States sat down for weeks and pursued diplomacy at the highest levels, the Vice President of the United States signed a memorandum of understanding, Iran fired again. And after the Iranian people dared to speak out for a new Iran, the regime battered its own people, and they're still spending millions on internet suppression. Why? As an aside, as a tragic aside, executions in Iran have surged. Despite the internet blackout, we know this. Javad Zamani, Abdul Fazi Sayadi, 2 students, young men, were just executed 10 days ago in Iran. You know their crime? As it was rammed through a revolutionary court with no representation, their crime was, quote, waging war against God. That was their crime. That's the crime. And I look at their representative. I don't know how he lays his head on his pillow at night. But whatever false choice the Ayatollah's cronies present him, it's not the only choice. Amnesty International says these protesters are still the ones who weren't, the 40,000 who weren't machine gunned in the streets in the period of one weekend. Amnesty International says they're being held in secret, they're being tortured into confessions, they have no counsel, and in some cases being publicly hung to send a message. There's an old scripture that says, quote, I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Iran cannot keep choosing death and curse. And today, we once again urge Iran to revert to the path of peace and dialogue. The world is not with Iran. Iran's own people are not with this regime. Its neighbors are not with this regime. Colleagues on this council and all responsible nations, it is a time for choosing. And please make your stance clear. These attacks are fundamentally unlawful, they are inconsistent with the Memorandum of Understanding, and they are certainly in violation of this council's resolution 2817. And they're a disservice to the future of the Iranian people. I cannot stress enough the possibility of real, transformative, positive opportunity for the nation and people of Iran is on the table. But President Trump's patience is not unlimited. The world cannot continue to suffer, and Iran must abide by its obligations to this council that this council voted for without opposition, and the world must hold this regime to account.
We have taken note of the statement delivered by the ASG, Ms. Espehar. Mr. President, at the time when technical talks facilitated by our Pakistani and Qatari brothers are focused on implementing the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, the Council is expected to refrain from convening a meeting that risks undermining these ongoing efforts. I categorically reject the baseless allegation made by the United States. Once again, the representative of the United States has resorted to lies and disinformation against Iran. The facts are clear. In the midst of diplomatic negotiation together with the Israeli regime, the United States betrayed diplomacy twice and launched 2 wars of aggression against Iran in blatant violation of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. These violations constitute a grave threat to international peace and security. I also reject the unfounded accusation made by certain Western members of the Council and the representative of Bahrain. Instead of addressing the root cause of the current crisis, they have ignored the unlawful aggression committed against Iran, remained silent in the face of these serious violations, and sought to shift blame onto the victims. Their double standards and hypocritical behavior have deprived them of any credibility to lecture others. Against this background, I would like to make the following points. First, Iran is the main victim of the wars of aggression launched by the United States and Israeli regime. The role of the victims and aggressor must not be reversed. The United States and Israeli regime have flagrantly violated the UN Charter and international law, including international humanitarian law, by imposing 2 unjustified and unwarranted wars against the Iranian people. During the attacks in June 2025 and between 28 February and 8 April 2026, the United States deliberately targeted civilians and civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, sport facilities, schools, and cultural sites. Even the President of the United States and other senior U.S. officials publicly admitted to and openly boasted about committing these heinous war crimes against the Iranian people and civilian infrastructure. More than 4,800 civilians, including women and children, were killed. The killing of schoolgirls in Minab remains one of the most horrific examples of this atrocious crime. The Security Council failure to discharge its responsibilities has reinforced impunity and emboldened further unlawful acts. The United States and the Israeli regime bear full responsibility for all the consequences of these wars of aggression and must be held fully accountable. Second, the United States has repeatedly violated the 8 April ceasefire and its commitments under the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding by launching further attacks against Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Iran has exercised its inherent right of self-defense in accordance with Article 51 of the Charter. Its defensive measures were directed against U.S. military facilities and bases, and its assets in the region from which attacks against Iran were launched. We strongly condemn the United States' recent air attacks and aggression of 27 June 2026 against Iran's southern coastal facilities, which constituted a flagrant violation of Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the Charter, as well as a clear breach of Paragraph 1 of the Islamabad MOU. Third, certain members referred to the politically motivated Resolution 2817. Iran's position regarding Resolution 2817 is clear, consistent, and well documented in the communication circulated as official document of the Security Council. Iran has rejected this politically motivated resolution. The resolution was adopted through a one-sided and politicized process and ignored the root cause of the crisis, denied Iran's inherent right of self-defense, and failed to determine the United States and Israeli regime as aggressors. No Security Council resolution can deprive a member state of its inherent right of self-defense under the UN Charter. Should aggression against Iran continue, or should the United States continue to violate the MOU, Iran will continue to exercise this inherent right to protect its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Rather than blaming Iran, these Council members should call on the United States to honor its commitments, cease its unlawful actions, and comply fully with the UN Charter and international law. Fourth, despite the deep mistrust to the United States caused by its repeated violation and the US betrayal of diplomacy, Iran engaged in diplomacy in good faith through negotiations facilitated by Pakistan and supported by Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, China, and the Russian Federation. This process resulted in the signing of the MOU on 17 June. We express our appreciation to Pakistan and Qatar for their tireless efforts and invaluable contribution to this process. The MOU clearly requires the United States to negotiate in good faith, and in particular to refrain from any threat or use of force against Iran. This commitment constituted a fundamental and indispensable obligation under the MOU, serving as an essential condition for preserving the confidence, stability, and good faith necessary for the successful continuation of the negotiation process. Yet, by launching another act of aggression and relying on a unilateral and legally unfounded interpretation of the MOU, the United States committed a material breach of its commitment and seriously undermined the diplomatic process. Fifth, Iran remains fully committed to implementing the MOU, including its provisions concerning the Strait of Hormuz, provided that the United States faithfully fulfill its own obligations. Paragraph 5 of the MOU provides, and I quote, "The Islamic Republic of Iran will make arrangements using its best efforts for the safe passage of commercial vessels, free of charge for a period of 60 days, from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman, and vice versa. The transit of commercial vessels will resume immediately, and taking into account the need to remove technical and military obstacles, demining by the Islamic Republic of Iran will be completed within 30 days. End of the quote. As has been stated by Iran's foreign minister, under the agreed arrangement, responsibility for the management of maritime navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, including its reopening and all necessary demining operations, rests exclusively with Iran. The implementation of this arrangement is currently underway in accordance with the MOU, and Iran has launched technical dialogue with the Sultanate of Oman. Any external interference or attempt to establish parallel arrangement would violate the MOU, undermine its implementation, delay the restoration of normal commercial navigation, put at risk safe maritime navigation, and increase regional tension. We therefore call upon all states, particularly the United States, to respect in good faith the letter and spirit of the MOU and refrain from reinterpreting its contents or action that interferes with its implementation. Sixth, Iran reiterates its commitment to the freedom of navigation and continue to ensure that such freedom is granted for all without interference. It should have been clear that the presence of US military bases and foreign interference in the Persian Gulf region brings nothing but insecurity. They have put at risk the regional security in general and the maritime safety in particular. The US has no coastal border in our region. It is not their waters, it is not their neighborhood. Defining and concluding a security regime for our region is the exclusive joint responsibility of the neighboring countries, and the US and others, rather than a destructive military presence or interference, needs to support regional countries to fulfill such responsibility. In conclusion, the priority must be the full implementation of the MOU and the continuation of negotiations toward a comprehensive deal. The Security Council should support this process, encourage full compliance with the MOU, and refrain from provocative actions that could undermine diplomacy or further escalate tensions. I thank you.
Unfortunately, the representative of the regime started his remarks today by saying, apparently, this council should not meet, should not speak. Let me remind you where you are. This is not Tehran. This is the United States of America. This is the United Nations Security Council. You will not silence this body. The representative goes on to say that the ambassador from Bahrain, the foreign minister, myself, and other members of this body are full of lies, that we're lying. Let me ask you, what here is a lie? Who's lying here? Is this Arab family in Bahrain in a residential neighborhood whose home was destroyed by an Iranian Shahed drone? Are they lying? Crown Plaza Hotel full of tourists? Are they lying? First responders whose headquarters were struck deliberately so that they couldn't put out fires? Were they lying? Is this hypocrisy? Is this what this council is here to denounce today? I asked the representative, are these lies? Are these photographs? Are these lies? I'd say not. And then thirdly, we hear claims of self-defense in accordance with the UN Charter. My message, our message to the Iranian regime, the UN Security Council's message is closing international waterways is not self-defense. He claimed that threatening commercial vessels is part of their sovereignty and self-defense. I ask, did the Singaporean Air Force or military attack Tehran or attack Iran? No. But yet Iran attacked a Singaporean flagged commercial vessel. We have a representative here, we have the ambassador here from Panama. Panamanian flagged vessels were attacked just in this last week. Did Panama attack Iran? Is that self-defense against Panama? Please, I hope the representative responds. I don't think Panama attacked Iran. I don't think Singapore attacked Iran. I don't think the rest of the world has attacked Iran. What we're hearing, and let's call it out for what it is, driving up the price of energy, driving up the cost of food, denying 61, according to the UN, 61 developing countries basic life-saving aid. It is a cynical, sad, and sick attempt at global blackmail, plain and simple. And we need to be crystal clear from this body that it is absolutely unacceptable. The United Nations Security Council, if it has a backbone, won't stand for it. The world won't stand for it. And that we will hold this Iranian regime accountable for its attacks on our populations around the world through this sick attempt at global coercion. I thank you, Mr. President.
Je remercie le...
I thank the representative of the United States for that statement. The representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give him the floor.
Thank you. I would be brief. In response to my brother Jamal from Bahrain, there is no doubt that certain regional countries, including Bahrain, facilitated this aggression by allowing their territory and their space to be used by aggressors. The international responsibility alongside that the United States and Israeli regime is clear and undeniable. You know that according to the General Assembly resolution, providing your space and soil to aggressor is act of aggression. And I think that it should be clear for our neighboring countries that the presence of American and spaces in their countries not only does not bring security to their countries, but also make their countries vulnerable. And response to representative of the United States, I ask him that maritime blockade is a collective punishment. You were in war with Iran. Why you prevent the international vessels could reach to the Iranian ports? You cannot deny the facts. The fact is that 70% of Americans and taxpayers oppose your administration war policy toward Iran. They believe that Americans' interests have been sacrificed for the Israeli interest. And in Iran, reality of the nation-state relationship is also evident in the funeral of Supreme Leader, which will take place next week. You can close your eyes and ears, but you cannot change the truth.